Good evening, Coach. I think it's probably evening where you're at. Where I am, it is 1 p.m., so I'm guessing 6 p.m.-ish for you. Appreciate reaching out. It has been a minute since I've kind of thought about this, but so I'm gonna do my best here. So it's funny you mentioned cover because I coached a U8 team in indoor in the fall, and this was a specific thing that we addressed because we played a team that was very, very good at finding the open player. They were really good about taking advantage of space, and when the ball carrier would have the ball, could find the open player. And that was something that a lot of the teams we played were not so good at. And so it challenged our defenders to not only have to defend the player on the ball, but have to defend players off the ball as well. In other words, how do we cover for the situations beyond just the ball carrier? And so first and foremost, the thing that you really need, of course, is an opponent who will do that. If you don't have a team or an opposition that will be able to take advantage of that space, it's difficult for players to conceptualize, well, how am I supposed to cover when there's no real need? So having that opposition is key. Being able to play against better opponents that are going to challenge you is key. So I'm not really sure exactly where you're set up in your opposition, but generally I'm guessing you are playing those kinds of teams. So this is kind of how we went from that standpoint. When I think of cover, generally speaking, I'm not thinking necessarily like the second defender marks the other attacker. It's simply they are trying to protect what happens if the ball carrier, in this case blue, who's attacking south, what is the defender going to do? If this defender's on the ball, what is this defender going to have to do to protect this player, not just from the ball carrier, but from whatever other options? They have to be able to recognize and look to see where's the danger, where do I need to be in order to protect the danger. So the first iteration we started with was blue attacking south towards 2 goals. Yellow has a defending or a counter goal that they can attack if they win possession. But I started it out very, very basic and made the pass opportunity for blue very, very obvious. So I would ask and we were in indoor, so I would ask the defender in yellow, who would initially be the first defender to play right against the wall. Their teammate would be in a recovery position, again, both right against the wall. I would stand there with the ball on my foot, right next to the player on the ball, and then I would take my foot off the ball and say, play. Immediately, what does the opportunity look like for them to do? There's that passing opportunity. They can play the ball into space to their teammate who can finish into one of the 2 goals. And so immediately after a couple of rounds, these players started keying in, we have to do something to stop that. And it's like, well, who's going to do that? Well, immediately this player recognizes they can't just watch the player on the ball. They've got to drop into a position where they can support. And so by adjusting those kinds of positions a little bit, especially creating or facilitating opportunities for the attacking team to find that pass, and in other words, requiring both defenders to have to recover into a position where they can defend more effectively. And we would adjust it a little bit, and as soon as they got a little bit better at it, we could maybe fluctuate it to make it more of a traditional 2v2. And so when this player had the ball, this player now has to decide, do I man mark here? What do I do? And we just continually just adjusted positioning, adjusted opponents, adjusted teams for that kind of 2v2 into 2 goals. So that was the easy version. Once we got a little more adept at that, and this was probably for like an age group up, like the age group I started with was like U8, the next one would be like U9, U10, I would do something like this. So this player starts on the ball, and again, attacking these 2 small goals, and I would set cones like right here, and this player had to get outside of either of these 2 cones for the play to start. So this defender could not try to attack or steal the ball until this player got outside the cone. But once they did, play was live. And so then the teammate attacker had to find space, and the additional defender had to react. How do I support the defender who is initially defending? How do I support the first hitter? How do I cover? Where do I get to try to trap or try to inhibit the pass? How do I support in a coverage area? But with this, it was a massive change of creating a chaotic starting point from which then they had to play. And so I like this chaotic version because although there wasn't like a, as in the easy version, it's like you're gonna have to run into that space to stop the pass. This one was they had to read what the initial ball carrier was doing and what their quote unquote mark was doing. Where do I go? And so they really had to be scanning to see what do I do to support the first defender. The hard version, and this is one where I think you can kind of play with these kinds of ideas in mind. But the hard version, first of all, is like a 3v2. So if we have some kind of like similar sort of starting points, maybe we start kind of like this, 3v2 to the 2 goals, and we just kind of build off of that. Maybe you even have this one pass in and then pass back, and now we start. How do the 2 defenders, how are they gonna operate together with being underloaded as defenders? So 3v2 is a really good way to kind of stress to them. You have to cover multiple spaces. You can't just man mark one player. You have to move around based on the situation in front of you. How do we support who the first defender is? Do we sit immediately behind, wait for that pass and shift? How does that work? The other hard version, and I really like this one a lot and this one is actually one I use for attack, is I will add in 3 goals. And these goals are, you can't shoot, you have to dribble through. So they're dribble through, pass through goals. And with this, basically the same thing, and this is back to the 2v2, but with there being more goals than defenders, it is really, really difficult for the defenders to have to defend both goals, because if they can try to trap this one here towards this one goal, this extra attacker being somewhere that this coverage defender is going to have to say, depending on this attacker's strengths and perhaps their weaknesses, should I cover to double in this space to collapse, or should I allow my teammate to 1v1 mark, and should I try to inhibit a potential drop pass, or should I situate myself somewhere here where I can predict where they might go based on their direction, based on their skill capabilities. But this idea of having more goals to defend than defenders is really, really challenging and really forces those defenders to have to hedge their bets and try to be very, very quick in how they try to make the attacking team predictable. Bottom line is, in all of this, the general idea I have in my mind is, rather than tell them what they should do, it is like, how can I create situations that are going to facilitate, constrain to afford opportunities that are going to fulfill the task goal, which is don't let the other team score. If you have 2v2, how can we work together to inhibit the opposition, the attackers, from scoring? How can we regain possession, and how can we then go score ourselves? What is the attacking team going to do? How can we work together? What is going to make us most successful? And by continually guiding them with these task parameters, with these constraints, it helps to give them ways in which they can approach the problem with solutions that work best for them. With the coach's guidance of how that might look in the game situations. Anyway, hope this wasn't too long-winded. I hope this was valuable for you. Appreciate your time. Thanks, Coach Luca. Cheers.